Alright, so I just finished the DLC for Persona 3 Reload called Episode Aigis. Now, I just want to say one thing. Unlike the main game, I actually did not play the original of this part of the story, which was actually originally in Persona 3 NVS. It was called The Answer. It was like a side story for that game, and I actually did not play the original of this, which in this game, Persona 3 Reload, this is actually a DLC called Episode Aigis. So this is my first time going through it. And I actually do remember is that people actually hated The Answer. I do remember that. People really hated it. Now, I can't actually compare this game and the old part of the story because I've never played the original, like I said. But with this remaster, or just call it remake, so in this remake, is it any good? And is it worth purchasing as DLC? So I'll be getting all into that in this review. So let's get into it. So the story of Episode Aigis actually takes place a little bit after the main game story ends. So it's actually like a sequel story. So if you've not finished the main game, make sure you finish the main game first because this story actually takes place immediately, not immediately, but sometime after the main game ends. And it contains a lot of spoilers for the main game. So make sure you play the main game first, especially if you've never played Persona 3 before, because this will spoil major events that happen in that game. It will spoil it immediately as you start the DLC. It will spoil everything for you. So make sure you actually play the main game first. So you play the main game first, finish it off, then start this DLC. Don't start this DLC before that because, like I said, this will spoil everything. And this DLC is actually a sequel story to the main game. So like I said, play the main game first and finish it off, then play this DLC. So that's my warning to you guys, so you guys can know that, because not many people actually knew that. So yeah, so finish off the main game first, finish it completely, then start this DLC. Now, because this is a non-spoiler review, I'll just say this about the story and I'll give you an overview of what the story is about. So in this game, like all the characters, they're actually dealing with the aftermath of the main game story. So this happens just some time after the main game ends. So they're dealing with the aftermath. So in this game, what happens is that they actually get stuck in a time loop. So the day for them just keeps repeating, and they can't seem to get out of it. Like so they're stuck in a time loop and they can't actually leave the dorm. So they're stuck in the dorm and they can't leave it, and the day keeps repeating for them, and they're trying to figure out of what's going on and why this is happening. So what happens is that they have to traverse a new dungeon called the Abyss of Time. So in the Abyss of Time, they actually relive some of their memories. So the whole thing is that they're trying to figure out like what's going on to them and have to like traverse the Abyss of Time, and they're kind of like reliving some of their memories. So whatever is going on is actually linked to them. So they're trying to figure that out. So I'm not going to say what happens because I have to get into major spoilers, but yeah, that's basically the premise of the whole story. Now, we do get to meet a new character called Metis, which is actually the sister of Aigis. So yeah, we get to play with a whole new character. And just to let you guys know, if you guys don't know, is that the main character for this DLC is actually Aigis. So you'll be playing Aigis as the main character. And for some reason, she does possess the ability of the wild card. So in this DLC, she can actually use multiple personas, which is why this is called Episode Aigis, because she is the main character you'll be playing as in this DLC. She's the main character. And just to give you guys an idea is why in the original game this was called The Answer, is because she's trying to find the answer to life. Basically, yeah. So that's why, if you guys didn't know that. So yeah, she's the main character in this DLC. Now, I'm not going to say any more about the story because, like I said, I have to go into major spoilers and spoil everything. But yeah, that's the overview of what the story is about. So when it comes to the story is not too bad, but don't expect something too great either. But it is a good sequel, I think, to the main game, if that makes sense. I do think it's a good sequel. Now, some people might disagree with that, but I think that it's a good sequel story, but don't expect too much out of it, if that makes sense. Like, I'll put it this way. It's a decent story, but it's also the closing arcs of these characters, because this is actually the last time we get to actually play with these characters. Well, technically speaking, I'm talking about in Persona 3 Reload. Well, if you count Persona 4 Arena, that's a different story. But yeah, so in Persona 3 Reload, this is the last time we get to play with these characters. So it's actually a closing arc to their stories. So think about it that way, right? So yeah, it's a decent story. Not something too grandiose, decent story, but it is the closing arc of these characters. Like it's the closure in a sense. So yeah, that's basically what I think about the story. Now, when it comes to gameplay, now you'll be exploring a new dungeon called the Abyss of Time. So just like a Tartarus, you'll be going floor by floor, clearing out shadows, killing sub-bosses and opening up treasure chests and stuff like that. Just like a Tartarus. So that's what the point of this DLC is. So you're basically going through a new dungeon. Now, because it's a time loop and you're stuck in the dorm, don't expect that you're going to be doing social links or going around a town or doing sub stories and things like that. You won't be doing any of that in this DLC, because the whole point of this, you are going through a new dungeon and you're stuck in the time loop and you're stuck in the dorm. So there's no exploration really there's no town exploration or any social links or anything like that in this DLC. It's just going to be the new dungeon, and you could go back to the dorm and you can go to Tonolia Mall to buy stuff. That's about it. So don't expect that you're gonna have a an open thing where you could go around the town anymore. Like, because you're stuck in a time loop, you don't even have the calendar system anymore. So that part of the game won't work. So you have nothing like that, like I mentioned. So it's all about exploring the new dungeon, which is called the Abyss of Time. So you'll be exploring all that mainly in this game. Yeah, that's basically with the gameplay. Now the combat system is exactly the same, except Aigis can use new Theurges, and Metis can use Aigis' old Theurges. That's the way they made it. So same type of gameplay, like same type of combat system, I mean. And Metis has her own skills, and yeah, that's basically same gameplay. The bosses are a lot harder in this, I've noticed, is that it's very hard to fish out for weaknesses, I find. Also, the reason why it's also harder is I noticed in this DLC is that the bosses will actually target your weaknesses more. That's something I noticed. So they'll target your weaknesses and try to get critical hits on you. That's what I noticed. So the bosses are a little bit harder. Also, the moon doors, right? This time they give you 3 types. So easy, normal, and hard. So yeah, if you guys want a challenge, yeah, go do the hard door. Yeah, that's the new thing that they added from the main game as well. So yeah, this time you get three of those doors. So when you find them, so it's so starting from the left to right, so it's easy, normal, and hard. Hard is actually hard because the higher difficulty you got, the more bosses you need to fight back to back. So let's say if you choose the hardest door, you'll be fighting 3 bosses back to back, literally back to back. Like so it's like basically one battle, but you're fighting 3 bosses back to back, one after another. So you won't actually have time to heal at all. So just keep that in mind. And once you beat these bosses, you actually get a lot of loot after that. So the harder difficulty, the better loot you get. Now, I personally just did them on normal, which you only fight 2 bosses back to back, and you get a decent loot in there. So I personally chose normal, but if you guys want a real challenge, go do hard. Go do the hard door. Like, I did try to do some of the early ones on hard. It is actually hard because you're, like I said, you're fighting 3 bosses back to back, but you do get very, very good loot at if you beat them. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to exploring this new dungeon, basically you're doing the same stuff as like what you did in the Tartarus. So you're fighting shadows, you're collecting treasure chests, you're fighting rare enemies, and you're fighting bosses at certain segments. So basically you're doing the same stuff as the Tartarus. Now, the way the Abyss of Time is designed, now you are getting into new areas, so that they did the areas are redesigned completely. There's new designs, also to keep it fresh, so you're not looking at the same stuff all the time. Also, instead of going up to progress, like you're going, because in the Tartarus you used to go up a floor. In this one, you actually go down the floor. So the more you go down, the more you progress in a sense. So they made it. So that's the way they made it in this one. So you're going down to progress this time. Yeah, so yeah, basically you're doing the same stuff, except the dungeon is designed differently. But yeah, like I said, you're doing the same stuff as a Tartarus. Now, speaking of progression, now this is the thing I actually didn't like in the DLC. What they've done in the DLC, your characters, they basically nerfed. So if you play the main game and let's say you train up to level 99, you'll be nerfed. I think it was level 25, I believe, if I remember correctly. So yeah, you're actually nerfed and you have to relearn all your skills again and all that stuff, which is actually, and you have to learn also you have to relearn the theurgies. So that's the one thing I didn't like. It kind of doesn't make sense because the way they play it is that they're out of practice and they forgot some of their skills. That's the way they play it in the DLC. But to be honest with you, not that much time has passed because I think that this is, I think, just like 1 month or something, just from the main game. So yeah, I didn't like the way they did that. I don't know why they did that, but it kind of doesn't make sense. I wish they didn't do that, but they did. Now, my personal opinion on that, I think it would have been better to set them all the characters up to level 99, but you can level up further. I think that would have been a better idea. Maybe you can level up to 150, for example. I think that would have been a lot better. And maybe you can learn like new skills, more powerful moves than the moves you had already. And it'll be more, they should focus on like more skill based as well, if you know what I mean. So you gotta target the boss's weaknesses a lot more. So that's what I think the route they should have went to, but they didn't. So they decided to do the nerfing stuff. So I hate it when they do that, but yeah, it is what it is. Now, there's also something else I didn't like. What I actually found kind of broken is that when you get to the part where you need to fight in a Colosseum, now if you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about here, yeah? So when it comes to the point where you need to fight in the Colosseum, I found doing those battles are a lot harder than fighting the final boss. That was kind of a bit broken because that's a part of the story segment, yeah. So when you fight in the Colosseum, if you can beat like all the enemies in the Colosseum, the final boss is so easy you'll steamroll through him. So yeah, that's another thing I actually didn't like because when it was time to fight the final boss, I destroyed him after the Colosseum part because in the Colosseum I struggled. I kept dying and dying and dying. I struggled in the Colosseum. But once I did that, when it was time for the final boss, I completely destroyed him because it was so easy after that point. So yeah, that's the thing I found broken during that part. Now, if you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. But I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it for people if you have not played this DLC yet. So yeah, that part was a bit broken. So, and I'm pretty sure if you played that part, you'll agree with me as well. So yeah, other than that, the DLC is pretty good. Like I did like the DLC. It was, like I said, it was a decent story, but it was the closing arc of these characters. So I did like it, but obviously you don't expect too much. Now, do I recommend this? And do I think the price is worth it? Now, if you're a player when you were playing Persona 3 Reload, if you didn't like the Tartarus exploration, like the whole Tartarus segment, then you're probably not going to like this DLC because the DLC of this is, like I said, the whole meat of this DLC is basically dungeon exploration. So the Abyss of Time is exactly like a Tartarus. You're going around fighting shadows and all that. So if you didn't actually like that part of the game, you're not going to like this DLC. However, if you want a closure to these characters and you want like a little continuation of the story a little bit more, then yeah, you are going to like this DLC. Because like I said, it's a decent story. Don't expect too much to like some grandiose story. It's a decent story, but it also brings the closure to these characters because this is the last time you're playing as them in Persona 3 Reload. So if you want to play something like that, like a DLC like that, like the closing arc, if you could say, then yeah, you are gonna like this. You are gonna like this DLC. Now, is the price worth it? Now that's the thing because I don't think this is. I don't think you can purchase this as standalone yet. I don't think I have to recheck that, but I'm not 100% on that. But I think you can't. You still can't buy this individually. You have to buy like the expansion pass to be able to play this, to be able to download and play this. I think it's still like that. Now, is the price worth it? See, that's the thing. Because the thing is that it is a little bit on the expensive side. Well, when you buy when you buy the expansion, you get this DLC, and I think you get four or three costume packs, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it is a little bit on the expensive side. But yeah, the price is that's the thing with the price. It's a little bit pricey for this type of DLC. Now, is it worth it? That will depend on you really, because like I said, if you want a continuation of the story, like because that's what I wanted to see, like a little continuation of the story and a closure for these characters. Like the last time you get to play with them, like their closing arcs, then yeah, go ahead and buy this because I think it is kind of worth it. It's a little bit pricey, but it is kind of worth it. I do recommend, if you've never played Persona before, I highly recommend you play the whole Persona 3 Reload, play the whole main game, and then decide to purchase this if you want to be on the safe side. That's what I'll recommend, actually. So, yeah, other than that, yeah, if you're not sure or you didn't like Persona 3 for some reason, or you don't like the Tartarus exploration for some reason, yeah, don't purchase this DLC. That's what I think. But other than that, I think I think it is, like I said, it is a bit pricey, but yeah, it did satisfy me, this DLC, because like I said, if you want a decent story with like the closing arc of this story of like this character's story, yeah, then go ahead and purchase this. I personally did like this DLC. Yeah, I think it was a good closure to these characters, and yeah, that's what I literally think about the DLC. So yeah, that's enough from me. Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Also, check out my main review for Persona 3 Reload, which should be on the screen now. And yeah, thank you for watching.